June 2021, Raton, New Mexico. The drive up was pretty much uneventful except for one scare. Las Vegas? Did I take a wrong turn? Nope, I'm still in New Mexico and headed for Colorado. Our destination is Trinidad, Colorado and the Tower 64 RV Park. Let's just say this park was not as advertised. The spot supposedly reserved for me was currently occupied by another RV belonging to a fine, upstanding citizen who is currently in jail and couldn't move it. So I had to do a quick scramble and find another RV park to go to. After many phone calls, I was able to find an RV park back in New Mexico. The Willow Springs RV park was only about 20 miles back the way I came. This RV park wasn't bad. The sights were a little narrow, but we could make do. So we set up, unpacked, and the next day we headed on out to Sugarite Canyon State Park. This was a nice looking park, and I love the green. Look, I've been warned about bears and lions and alligators and snakes, but this is new. I guess the danger here is being burned alive. I guess we'll risk it and take the short 3/4 of a mile trail to Horse Mesa. This started out as a nice trail, lots of beautiful flowers along the way to take a look at. But I guess I should have looked up the definition of mesa. For your information, it's an isolated flat-topped hill with steep sides. And steep is the important word in that sentence. In no time at all, that trail turned straight up. But hey, we're tough. We kept on going and just stopped along the way to smell the flowers. Okay, who am I kidding? We stopped because we couldn't breathe anymore and we simply had to take a rest. I couldn't believe we got winded so fast, and then I remember, we're at 8,000 feet and we're just not used to this altitude. But our persistence paid off and we reached the top and, hey look, it is flat. After a short rest, we crisscrossed the mesa to different sides to take in the view. And the view from up here was beautiful. You can look up north and see Colorado. You can look down south and look back down the canyon into New Mexico. After spending some time up on top of the mesa, it was time to turn around and make our way down. And as usual, going down is in many ways harder than going up. Yes, it doesn't take anywhere near the energy it took to go up that trail, but you have to be way more careful because it's so much easier to fall when you're going down on some of that very loose rock. But the climb down was nice because it seemed that with every step I could breathe a lot easier. And yes, that's the mesa way up there that we were on top of. Our next stop up this canyon was Lake Alice. So we only made a short stop there before moving on up to Lake Maloya. We picked a nice shady spot alongside Lake Maloya to have our lunch with a view. We haven't had one of these for a while, and this was one of the prettiest views we've had in, well, I don't know how long. After lunch, we decided to spend a few hours just kicking back, reading a book, and enjoying the view. We made an afternoon out of it, and we needed the rest after some of that hiking. And after doing absolutely nothing for a few hours, we headed back down to the RV to end the day. The next day took us out to explore this hill, except it's not really a hill. It's a volcano. This is the Capulin Volcano National Monument. We were able to drive up near the rim with the car and then step to the rim and look all the way down into the crater. This was really cool. We'd been to a volcano before, in fact, last week, but this one isn't as big, and with this one, you get a sense of the crater. It's really cool looking down at that thing. But before we started to take our hike down into the volcano and up around the crater, we spent some time chatting with two new friends, a couple of retired Marines that we met while we were up on the crater's edge. After a short time of chatting, it was time to start our hike. a quarter of a mile down 100 feet into the very crater of the volcano. The lava rock on the way down was spectacular, and once we got to the bottom, looking back up 100 feet, we could see all the way around the crater. Wow, to think that at some point back in time, this whole area was one big lake of molten hot lava. And now, we're just standing here looking up at the crater it left behind. But there's no need to worry. The last time this thing erupted was 60,000 years ago, and now it is very, very dormant. After looking around, it was time to hike 100 feet up to the parking lot, and then another 300 feet up so we could hike all the way around the rim of this volcano. Whew, this 8,500 feet above sea level is really taking it out of us. Since we started in the crater, well, that's 200 feet down and 200 feet to go to the highest point of the rim around this crater. The view from the top was really nice, but the view from the rim looking back down into the crater, well, now that was really spectacular. Right there in the distance is the parking lot. That's where a portion of the crater wall collapsed and the lava spilled out to create this big lava field. The path along the top was very smooth, but kind of narrow in places with drop-offs on both sides. So after completing our hike around the rim of this volcano, it was time to drive down the side and make our way home. Janet was doing the video, so I never really got a chance to enjoy the view going down this road. This road was just too dangerous for me to enjoy the scenery as I tried to navigate down the side of the volcano. The road down the side is narrow, it's windy, it's got gravel all over the place from gravel washing off the side of the mountain, and in areas part of the road was even washed away and we had to be careful. And just in case you're wondering, no, I was not driving this fast. I just sped up the video 6 or 7 times. That way you didn't have to sit there and just watch me drive for like 5 or 6 minutes. And eventually we made it down and home and started talking about our next excursion, which was a drive up to Trinidad Lake in Colorado. Trinidad Lake State Park was one of the places we wanted to see before we ever came up here. We go to a lot of places, and they can't all be great, and this park fell into the category of not so great. The lake was all brown and muddy. Maybe that had something to do with the weather and the recent rain. I really don't know. The trails were not very well maintained, and the trail map provided by the park was not that useful and very hard to read, although the flowers along the way were still very pretty. Also, if you plan to RV in the Colorado State Park system, beware. Colorado charges by the vehicle. So, if you have an RV and you are towing a vehicle like we do, you will get charged double, once for each vehicle. Once we got here, we found out that our $80 annual pass was actually going to cost us $120 because we have 2 vehicles. Unexpected expenses aside, it's still time to drive home and start thinking about our next excursion, which just happened to be back up to the Sugarite State Park. So our last day here started with coffee with the rangers, where we learned a little bit about the state park. The ranger told us that before this place was a state park, it used to be a coal camp. The coal camp trail took us on a hike through what used to be the mining town, along with a hike up into the mountains to see the mines. From 1912 to 1941, this camp housed as many as 1,000 miners and their families. Besides the houses for the miners, this town also had a schoolhouse, a clubhouse, a doctor's office, and a community oven. Yes, the camp also had the required company store, but it also had a baseball field, and the schoolhouse itself provided an education to the miners' children like they could never get anywhere else back in the day. The hike around the remains of the town was pretty easy, but the hike up to the mine was another one of those steep hikes that again really took it out of us. Along with the entrance to the mine and the old dynamite shack, we also found the old cable pulley system used to transport coal down into the valley. Controlling the cable cart speed was done by a brakeman, and we also found remnants of the old brake house. We learned a lot about the coal town, the mine, and the people who lived there. But when we came down, it was time to go back to the lake and relax the day away. This was our last afternoon here at Raton, New Mexico, and soon it was going to be time to go back down, do some pre-packing, and get ready to leave tomorrow. So our stay here at Raton turned out to be a little unexpected, but it also turned out to be great, all because of the Sugarite Canyon State Park. So although we should have been up in Colorado, because of the mess up in the RV parks, we ended up back in New Mexico and spent another week here. But we still went up to Colorado and explored a few places up there during our stay here, so we're adding Colorado to the lists of places that we explored since we started our RV travels. So again, tomorrow morning, it's time to move on, and I certainly hope we'll see you at our next stop.